Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. I know if you're watching this that you're enjoying the Bumps and Thumps podcast. In order to continue the podcast and get the guests on that everyone wants to hear about, we need support from listeners like you. There are a few ways you can do this. One is going to anchor.fm, which will be on the bottom of your screen here, and click the support button. There you can make a monthly contribution to support the podcast. There's also, we have a Teespring store. We have a link down at the bottom of the screen as well for that. And we have products such as t-shirts like this one I'm wearing, backpacks, glassware, and other great items for you to purchase. Those purchases go directly back into the podcast and get on guests that require financial compensation. Thank you again for your support. Go to those websites and support our podcast, and we will continue to bring the guests that you want to hear about, past and present. And thank you for your support and enjoy the podcast. Thank you for joining another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. My guest today is considered to be one of the best minds and competitors in the pro wrestling business. He is most remembered as the Prince of Darkness, leader of the Varsity Club, and the Dungeon of Doom. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome the Taskmaster himself, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Brian, for letting me be on the show, and I've been looking forward to it. But you know, when you were given the rundown, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, the one that is overlooked and probably maybe my best work ever, because I wasn't doing it, the Varsity Club.
The Varsity Club, you know, you say that, and what's funny, as I remember that, I was about, I don't know, probably 14 or 15 years old when that fashion was formed. And I just thought it was amazing because Mike Rotunda up to that point was always a baby face. He was the all-American, Mr. Good Guy. And when he turned heel and joined the Varsity Club, to me, that was like the it for that fashion. To me, and you, of course, and Rick Steiner, Steve Williams, you know, Danny Spivey. I mean, it was a great fashion.
Yeah, and I don't think because it was so limited run.
Yeah, no, it didn't last very long.
They didn't get their due, and hey, the talent that was in there. I mean, you mentioned Dan Spivey, Dr. Death, Mike Rotunda, Steiner. And I'll tell you a real quick story. I think the reason why it didn't last long, Rick Steiner was so entertaining because I went to Dusty and I said, Dusty, we can't keep him heel. The people are turning him just like they turned you, Dusty. And, you know, he was listening to Alex, you know, and all that. And I can remember I did a rib on Steiner that backlashed on me. We turned him babyface, and the first time I wrestled him in the Boston Gardens.
Oh, wow.
So I got with the announcer. And usually I would go to the ring first, right? Being the heel and Steiner. But I told the announcer, clued him in what we're doing. Marvin Hagler was on the front row with his kid. All kind of celebrities were there. Patriots, Red Sox, Celtics, Bruins, everybody. And I have Rick go out. Whole building, the Gardens is going, ooh, 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 like they used to do from, you know, parking. Yeah. And it also says, coming down the aisle from the home of the new NBA champions, the Detroit Pistons, and they turned on him in an instant, started booing on the ring. I make my entrance, and the announcer says, and from the home of the greatest franchise in NBA history, the Boston Celtics. People pop, right?
Oh, that's
I
great.
get in the ring, and smoke is coming out of his ear. So I said, he'll calm down. He shot me in and gave me one of his clotheslines. And I did a Linda Blair and fell out of the ring by Hagler. And I'm pulling myself up in front of Hagler. I said, brother, you going to give me a hand? And he said, brother, you're on your own. But Steiner was so over. And, the matches he had with Dr. Death and Mike, I mean, they were, I hate to use this word, but I don't think these guys were smartened up because the way they were whacking each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great to see.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we didn't, when people talk to me about my history, that isn't brought up very often. And it's probably the best I ever saw, where you had three heels or four intermingling with Danny, four heels, where the people almost got the respect of the four horsemen.
Yeah.
Because they were so tough.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, without a doubt, when I was a kid, I absolutely, your two fashions were actually probably, I would watch it, TBS, the Saturday night, WCW Saturday night, and be looking forward to the Varsity Club and the Horsemen. And it was a short-lived run. Now that you said that, I never, but it's too bad because, it was a great group of guys. They were tough. You were tough.
Yeah.
You guys all had that background, that amateur background, which made it even more, realistic and tough guys, So I want to talk a little bit, if we could, growing up. So my understanding is you're born and raised in Massachusetts, around Boston area.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood and schooling and things like that, if you would, please.
Yeah, my family was originally from South Boston. As a child, we moved across the river to Cambridge. My dad was a Boston cop.
Okay.
Mother worked in the school systems. I played, all the sports that kids would play, and then I got kind of directed into wrestling. I wrestled for when I was like 10. I started wrestling at the Cambridge YMCA and then the Waltham Boys Club.
Okay.
And then I ended up going to the YMCA Union. It's the second oldest athletic club in the United States.
Oh, okay.
The New York Athletic Club is the oldest. The YMCA Union, not YMCA A. It's YMCA Union is the second oldest, and I started wrestling with them. I don't know if anybody had ever heard of Jack Pesic. He was in the 30s the policeman for Strangle Lewis.
Okay, Ed Strangle Lewis, yeah.
Yeah, he was the real deal. And this kid ended up being the coach of the Olympic team, and he's also the coach of the amateur team at the YMCA Union.
Okay.
And I would see the pro wrestlers come in, but they wouldn't get on the mats and wrestle. They just lift weights and go take steams and stuff.
Yeah.
And then one day I was wrestling, and a guy came in from South Africa, and he said, "Hey, you want to work out?" And I said, "Yeah." And I think he was 40 and I was like 18 or 17. And I was 18, and these were working out, and we became friends. And he had graduated from Oxford and Harvard Business School.
Oh, geez.
He was, do you remember, what was the shirts that came out. You won't remember it. It was an Arrow shirts where they had the button down collars. They were the hottest things at one time. He was a male model. I mean, he was in soap operas at the time.
Oh, wow.
But little did I know, he was from the Berry family, the diamond mine people in South Africa.
Okay.
So we got to be friends. And one time he said, "Hey, you ever want to go, ever think about being a pro wrestler?" I said, "Nah." He said, "Well, that's the only thing I ever wanted to do." And I said, "Well, why don't you do it?" He said, "Well, I do it on these small groups, but my family won't allow me to do it. It's beneath our stature in South Africa."
Oh, gosh.
So I said, "Well, it's not beneath my stature." So when I went, he was booked in Montreal, and this was a guy. This is like a history lesson.
Yeah.
The guy's name was Pat Gerard, and that's when there was two offices in Montreal, the Vachons and the Rougeos.
Okay.
But Pat was everybody's idol. He trained Pat Patterson, Ronnie Garvin, Fernand Frechette, Jimmy Garvin. It went a host of others,
Yeah.
because at one time he was the biggest paid wrestler in the world.
Oh, wow.
He was wrestling in London 4 and 5 times a day, never
Oh, wow.
leaving London. And he had a Rolls Royce. And then he got an addiction problem, and then he went back. But because everybody held him in such reverence,
Mhm.
they would send, he had his students and guys that were starting, but the two officers who allowed guys to intermingle at that. It was in Verdun. So I went to it, and I had wrestled there for 10 years. I'm waiting for them to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So my friend's name was Peter, and I said, Peter said, "Well, what match you on?" I said, "I don't even know. They haven't told me." So Peter says, "I'll find out." He comes on and says, "I'm on the first match. You're on the third match." I said, "Well, when are they going to tell me what's going on?" He says, "Oh, let me get the referee." So Peter says, ref, he doesn't know what's going on. The referee says, in a French Canadian accent, I'll get back. This goes on. Bells ringing. I have no idea what's going on. Now I know you can't pull the guy down by his hair, his tights. I mean, 10
Yeah.
years after, I wasn't an idiot. So I get in the ring, and I'm with this guy, Fernand Frechette, who had been a big star on both companies, but he
Mhm.
was wearing a mask to kind of kayfabe who he was, right?
Right.
So he tries to put me in a hold, and I screw it up, I'm sure. But how bad it was probably the worst of all times. I fly near him, and he goes down, not smoothly because my legs are in the way, my arms are in the way.
Uh-huh.
I hear him go, "Oof." I panic, and I kick him. I guess I thought I was going to try to kick a field goal, because he rolled out in the apron. He's going, "Oh." And back in the day when that old spot where guys would slingshot the guys back into the ring,
Mhm. Yeah.
I blanked. I knew that I was supposed to do something. I hit the ropes, and I came off, and I was really in good shape then. I was about
Yeah.
230. And I hit the ropes and came off probably 40 miles an hour, and I knocked him 4 rows back. He got up, started cussing, and they tabernacle, the man don't we, they do that French cussing. He pulls off his mask. I said, "Oh God, something's wrong." He starts going. I jump on the second rope. "Come back, come back." So I said to myself, "Boy, I'm gonna get my ass kicked. I better be prepared." I walked back, and he grabs me and says, "What the hell were you doing?" I said, "This is my first match. Nobody told me what to do." He said, "What?" And I told him that, and the referee tried to go in behind us. He snatched the referee by the throat and said, "Hey, this kid could have hurt me real bad, and I could have snapped and hurt this kid real bad. You
Yeah.
guys really screwed up.
Yeah.
So this is when I realized that wrestlers are basically good people.
Yeah.
He said to me, next week you're booked on the card. I know that. He said, I saw your name. You come up the night before. I'll come over the day of the show 3 hours early, and I'll work out with you and show you at least the basics. So that's
Wow.
how it started. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That's pretty, I've heard a lot where they didn't smarten you up when you did the training or
I
whatever.
never did any training.
See, you're one of the few, okay? Nikita Koloff, I interviewed him probably a year and a half ago. Same thing, it says on the internet he's trained by Eddie Sharkey. He says, nope, never was trained. I just went in. So that's amazing. You're the second person, and for all your accomplishments that you've done, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think it was because maybe I respected what they did.
Yeah.
And I understood, how
Mhm.
difficult it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how difficult it was to really make people, when they came in, to hang their hat up, willing suspension, disbelief, and buy into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like when I was a kid, I was a wrestling fan. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I saw, I don't know if it was 10 years ago. I've told this story so long. I'm watching, do you know TV Land channel?
Yeah. Yeah.
Shows the old TV.
Yeah.
Program, right? I'm watching this program, and it's Superman. And there's a wrestler from India that's a shooter. And all the wrestlers,
You're all right.
all the wrestlers bitching that, he's shooting. They're saying, oh, this can't be, this can't be. So what they do is they take these cinder blocks and cement him into the dressing room because he's going to wrestle the champion, right? So Superman flies by, sees what's going on with his X-ray vision, flies into the building, knocks the cinder blocks out. The guy goes out, and the character actor that plays the promoter, everybody would know who he was, yells, I love it. Real wrestling. I love it. And I look at the bottom, at the ends of the credits, it's 1953. So they've known wrestling's work way back.
Yeah.
But to have the ability, I wrestled amateur 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
When I went and saw the original Sheik,
Mm-hmm.
the building actually moved. I'm telling you, I thought it did anyway. And I said, I know the rest of this is not real, but he is.
Yeah.
What kind of a convincing have do you do your brain where everything else is fake except one guy?
I mean, I remember the Sheik. Yeah, he was crazy.
Yeah.
But I tell you, even back when I was, in the 70s and 80s, I believed it because it was so convincing. I guess I want to say that the guys, and I think that's the difference today is with social media and things like that. When they're in the match, they wrestle. When they're outside the match, they're best buds or whatever, and they go back and forth on social media. And I think that's what really kills it a lot. And I understand you got to make money too and things, but I don't know. It's just a lot different than when I was a kid. I mean, I believed that you were the Prince of Darkness. I believed you were that heel. I always wanted to go through the television and just wring your neck half the time because you were so convincing. And Varsity Club too, like when Mike Rotunda turned. I mean, I love Mike Rotunda. And
Right.
when he did that, it was just like, he stabbed me in the heart, to be honest.
Do you know, here's what I believe too, Brian. And they're much more athletic.
Mhm.
They look better, but here's the difference. How much do you hear from Brock on social media? I don't think you hear anything.
Nothing.
Okay.
Zero.
Well, if the guy's drawing the most money in the world and getting paid the most, why would you follow his advice?
Yeah.
Right? Why
Right.
are you following the guy that's on the first match's advice?
Yeah.
I personally think like you do, and I understand social media and, but here's the thing. It gets me now when I hear The Undertaker do interviews because he kept it so tight for so many years.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't believe he was the dead man, you thought there was something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem is, I think, and the reason why these people are buying into it, and I don't blame them because of money.
Yeah.
People are more interested in what's going on in the back than the matches.
Yeah. You hit it right. Nail on the head there, Kevin. Exactly.
And I don't want to be a harbinger of doom, but I just read something today because I was going to come up with some facts for you. Rogers and O'Connor, right? Comiskey Park, 1960.
Mm-hmm.
First time a heel got the belt, right? Now heel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
38,000 people. Biggest house for 20 years, $144,000. What they failed to tell you is the following weekend, another event, and it wasn't the White Sox, it was Comiskey Park. It wasn't the White Sox and it wasn't a concert. That event drew almost 42,000 people. What do you think it was?
I'm sure it was a wrestling match from what.
No, it was roller derby.
Roller derby. Wow.
Where's roller derby today?
Don't even hear about it. Probably doesn't even exist. If it does, it's very
regional. I live in the islands, as you know, and it's kind of semi-big here, but it's the girls' roller derby that's semi-big. But when they get more, and here's the thing. Back then, they didn't have UFC biting on their ass.
Yeah, true.
I mean, Ryan, I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
You're watching the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
This last one.
Okay.
LA scores, but Brady's got time, right? They get time. They don't run out. He's got the ball. He's moving down. Gronkowski makes a great catch. Blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, they're on the 5-yard line. One of the Rams runs out and steals the ball, and the game goes off. We don't have enough time.
Yeah.
They shoot the signal off. Are you going to watch that Super Bowl again? Maybe one time.
Yeah.
But if they do that same finish, you're not going to do it.
Right.
And here's what I find. If anybody that's involved in wrestling, that's in the back, I want them to listen to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
They've been bitching about dusty finishes for years. They still do.
Yeah.
And before it was dusty, it was Louis Tillett that actually did them. I almost cost Louis his job. When I was a rookie in Florida, they had the best of Florida Championship Wrestling on at the end of the year. And I went fishing after I played with Eddie Graham. And he said, "What did you think of the show?" I said, "It was great, but I saw 8 big matches where the referee got knocked down." Not only did Louis Tillett bring it in the 70s,
yeah,
in the 50s, the guy that had Houston, Morris Siegel was doing it then.
Yeah.
We gotta get out of patents. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
can't stand it when I've been in the business since 1970. I can't stand it when I see a referee go down again. I mean, you can only create it so many times. Let me ask you this. When's the last time in heavyweight boxing, and I'm a big boxing fan because my family's been in it. My great uncle was John L. Sullivan, the last bare
yeah.
knuckle champion.
Yeah.
My first cousin, Tom McNeely, fought Floyd Patterson for the title. His
Wow.
son, who's my second cousin, fought Tyson, Peter McNeely.
Wow.
And then I have other ones on my mother's side, other Sullivan. So I don't know if I'm half-ass inbred, but when's the last time you've seen a heavyweight fight where a referee got knocked down?
I haven't, never.
Are we losing some kind of credibility when we keep on doing it? And here's the crazy thing. People that influence the wrestling business, these journalists, knock it, but they go ahead and let it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying because yeah, you see it over and over and you're kind of like, when's this gonna end? Yeah, I see that. I do.
Yeah, we fall in. Here's the thing: it's smart. I've been around some of the most brilliant guys ever.
Yeah.
Leo Garibaldi. Me and Piper used to say he was the smartest guy we ever met.
Yeah.
Eddie Grant.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Barnett, Vince Senior. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But we all fall into patterns, so we have to have somebody to say maybe we shouldn't do that tonight. And that's what I'm seeing. In today's day and age, there's nobody that's connected with a major promotion that says, can I bring the consenting vote and say, maybe we shouldn't do this?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't understand why they follow it to the same patterns.
I think it's honestly, Kevin, I think it's been going on for so long, I guess, that it's been ingrained in your mind that the referee or something like that, it's going to happen if the match, and I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it does get frustrating. Once maybe, like, I don't know, once a year or something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be great, but when it's like every 2 weeks or every week or whatever, yeah, it does get a little monotonous and a little old. And I think too, is that they don't, maybe, and you've been in the business, I'm just the outside looking in. I think that the person that the matchmaker or the booker, they are trying to just not be as creative as they used to be. And it's a little frustrating because back in your era, you were a booker, it was very simple. I think back then you just said, hey, these two are fighting or matching. This is the outcome, whatever it is. You guys deal with it in between. There was more, I guess the persons that were wrestling had more involvement in the match as far as how it went. And then maybe I'm wrong. That's what I've heard before.
No, I think you're right, Brian, because when I ask guys, like, how long you been in the business? And again, this is not knocking anybody. It's a different life. It's a different time, different era. Yeah. It's their time. I say, how long you been in the wrestling business? And they say, 3 years. I said, how many matches have you had? And they'll say 80. Well, my first year in the business, I had over 400 matches. I'll give you an example.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Friday night, I used to go to Knoxville, wrestle in Knoxville on Friday night. Mm-hmm. Saturday morning, I'd do Knoxville TV. Mm-hmm. I would drive 100 miles to Chattanooga and do TV in Chattanooga in the afternoon.
Mhm.
At 7 o'clock, I'd go to Chattanooga Auditorium and wrestle on the first or second match. They would fly me to Birmingham to do midnight TV.
Oh, wow.
So these guys, like everything else, you get better with more reps than you do.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm glad to see that that some of the now we're seeing some house shows
Mhm.
and guys get to learn
Yeah.
rather than just on TV, because that's a lot of pressure. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're gonna be performing in front of a bunch of people. If you
Yeah.
screw up,
Yeah.
you've got it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I want to ask you a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
One is, you were a baby face for quite a while during the first part of your career.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I've seen matches with you when you were in the WWF. And what was that moment when you decided, or they decided that, hey, we're going to make you heel and you're going to be Prince of Darkness, Kevin Sullivan? What was the, what was that like?
How does that moment happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how it happened was I had turned heel in Atlanta against Tony Atlas and Steve Kern, but it was a basic heel turn. And then I went to Memphis for a short time
Mm-hmm.
and worked with Lawler. Then I went and booked for Blackjack Mulligan in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Knoxville was kind of swapping talent with Atlanta, so I was working Knoxville, Atlanta.
Yeah.
And Dusty came in, and I had known Dusty since I started. He said, "Wait, why don't you come in?" I said, "Hey, I got an idea." And I gave him the idea, but not the complete idea.
Yeah.
It was when I went in, I came back to Florida as a babyface.
Mm-hmm.
But the Wyndham family said, "Mike and Eddie, you're trusting him. He's not the same guy." Kern sent in an interview from Memphis, said he's not the same guy. Tony Atlas sent an interview. And then finally I had a confrontation with Mulligan. I said, "Hey, listen, you don't live in a glass house. You got no right to throw a stone. You haven't been the best guy either. I've made mistakes just like everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm trying to rectify the mistakes. But you got to realize that back then MTV had first started.
Okay. Yeah.
Billy Idol,
Yeah.
Thriller, Michael Jackson, right?
Mm-hmm.
The horror genre was on.
Yeah.
The world was changing and getting darker, especially in Florida, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people making millions of dollars a day in Florida. So I knew I had an idea where the character was going,
Mm-hmm.
because I also believe if you're booking, you better know the end of the story before you write the first page.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always believe that you should book a year out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So just like a character, you should know where it's going to end. So I started that the guys they were right, that they were judging me, but they were wrong because I wanted to change.
Yeah.
So finally, there was a Florida title was up for grabs, and me and Barry wrestled 54 minutes in 106 North Albany. Mike Graham was special announcer. We do this thing where I go to leg dive. Barry at like the 48-minute mark, he moves out of the way. I go to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
He holds the rope open. I come back in. We shake hands. Right before the finish at the 54-minute mark, he goes to do it. We reverse roles. He goes to the floor. I hold the rope open. He walks in. I kick him in the face, beat him, grab the belt, and Mike Graham's screaming, "What's going on? What are you doing?" I said, "You only wanted one thing, this belt." And I laced him. I mean, I laced Mike.
Yeah.
And I knocked him over on the floor from Gordon's desk. And He was so pissed. He chased me, but I hit him so hard Remember when jeans used to have buttons in the crotch?
Yeah.
He blew all the buttons off his crotch the way he took the bump, and he chased me, and he would have caught me. He would have beat the dog shit out of me. Except he had to be holding his pants up that were at his ankle. So when I did that, I slowly started to do like putting makeup under my eyes,
Mhm.
and then be talking about interviews. And then during the interviews, I say, "Oh, I see you in that brown LTD. You're not going to catch me. I'm playing to Florida." You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They know I'm not on NyQuil. You know what I mean? Staying up late. Everybody is getting the message. And then I started to do the Abuddin, which is a fertility god. Because when I went to, I did a lot of traveling in
Mhm.
Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Samoa. And I kind of really studied that culture. And I thought, we're all afraid of something we don't know.
Mhm.
That's why, they asked me to bring out a character, Habuddin, but I said, no, right, your boogeyman doesn't look anything like my boogeyman, right?
Yeah. Right.
Doesn't look like your brother's boogeyman or my brother's boogeyman.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is, I had to overcome my stature. You know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
wide and big, but I always thought, do you remember the Alien, the first movie of the Alien?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember when he popped out the guy's chest?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was he, 12 inches tall? And at the end of the movie, he's taller than anybody, 20 feet.
Yeah.
Is he really 20 feet, or are they just perceiving him as 20 feet? Because if we took a fly swatter out and hit him when he first came out, the movie's through.
Yeah.
So my deal was, when I got ready to turn, and I did that on Barry, I was booked against Blackjack Mulligan
Mhm.
the next day, because we were leading up to this, that if Mulligan and I could settle our difference in the ring, and then I beat Barry, and they
Mhm.
saw it that night in Orlando. Well, we thus they had me come over to the babyface dressing room, which was unheard of. And Blackjack said to Dusty, "Who's the booker? What do you want in this match?" He said,
Mhm.
"Well, why don't you guys work at DQ?" And he looked at Dusty and said, "No." He said, "He's going to beat me and get me to death. And then Kendall's going to come down. He's going to drop Kendall. Barry's going to come down. He's going to drop Barry." And he said, "You're coming down and you're laying down from two. If we're going to get him over,
Yeah.
we'll get him over tonight." And I was lucky, man. I had the biggest and baddest baby faces of all time flopping for me, you
That's
know?
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. So we're just talking about that a little bit. And now let's talk about once you transition to that Prince of Darkness, Taskmaster, you pretty much stayed a heel your whole time. The rest of your, as far as I can remember, your career, I
Yeah.
think, yeah. And that's always I remember you as that heel, the Prince of Darkness, the Taskmaster, the leader of the Varsity Club, the Dungeon of Doom, and you just it felt like you just came out of your shell. Like before, you were in the ring. You might have said a few little comments, but nothing, you know, notable. I guess I want to say, and that's not a bad thing. It was just that when you brought that heel side of you out, you just had it. You know, it was just that was you, and it was just a big transformation. Because I remember it. I was like, oh my gosh, what happened to Kevin? Somebody really ticked him off, you know, and
Yeah.
um, but I want to talk a little bit more about some pay-per-view events. So you were like Starcade, Great American Bash. I know you're pretty involved in that as far as not just wrestling, but the booking part too. I mean, that had to be pretty stressful for you.
Yeah. But I mean, I really enjoyed my job.
Yeah.
And, uh, you're bound around a lot of guys
Hmm.
who are very smart. I mean, I was on the booking committee, and then later on I booked it myself, and then I was the assistant booker with Kevin Nash. So you're around a lot of great guys, around a lot of creative guys,
Mhm.
and then the talent, there's a lot of creative talent around. So I was very lucky to do that, but is the pressure on you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to draw. And then here's the thing. I'm sure in today's day, I mean, I remember when it was 3 days before you found out a pay-per-view. Now they give you a sampling the night of what they think, and then the next 24 hours, so if you hit or miss inside of 24 hours. So it's a stressful
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you had to be very, I mean, I've heard your name a lot as a booker, Dusty Rhodes, Dutch Mantel. Uh, those three names stick out to me as brilliant minds of the business of the 80s and into the 90s, as the guys that really knew the craft and knew how to book people with the right opponents and all that. And that'd be
I,
pretty stressful. And that'd be pretty, I mean, you have to be creative all the time, not just a one shot deal. And
I,
I praise you for that, because today, I don't think it's, and I shouldn't be knocking the business, because, they got to do what they got to do for money. But I'm saying, I don't think it's as quite as creative as it used to be.
here's the thing. And again, these kids are so talented,
Yeah.
so talented. But when when I said I knew it was bullshit when I was a kid because I had an amateur background,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I bought into the Sheik. I bought into him. I thought he was a lunatic. I thought he didn't speak English. And then he became one of my dearest friends as I got older. And we
Yeah.
became super close. He was one of the nicest guys ever in my life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wrestled Dusty. Think about this. And almost every night of the week for 3 years in some kind of capacity, either me against him, me and Mark against him and a partner,
Mm-hmm.
Mark wrestling him, me being on the floor. It goes on and on and on. I never once heard anybody yell, Dusty, you're fat.
No.
Okay. If he got on social media, eventually today, some would say, hey, why don't you stop? Eat a salad, Dust. Okay.
Yeah.
The three guys you mentioned, the only three things that Dusty, Dutch, and I have in common, we're around 80 grams.
There you go.
And Dusty and I a bit longer than Dutch.
Okay.
But Dutch had other great people to teach him Jerry.
Jerry.
Like, I think Dusty and I had Barnett too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with you. It's like this. You know why this MJF is getting over?
I like MJF, but I want to hear your opinion.
I'll tell you why he's getting over. I know a lot of people he's going to get on people's nerves because he doesn't come out of character.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
He's so obnoxious.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I think his character's over. He's not overly big. He looks like an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed lately that he's obviously been trained a little because he's got a little more buffer.
Yeah.
But he's got that, he's at that area where people are watching saying, I know I can beat him up. I like to punch that big mouth in the face. It ain't like you're going against the warlord,
Yeah. Yeah.
barbarian or Haku. The people at home were saying, "Oh, I like to shut him up." I think this is how he really is, where everybody else is doing it like tongue in cheek. You guys are coming to the show and you're saying this is awesome and holy shit, and you're in on the joke too, so we'll do it. But he doesn't.
No, even in interviews that I've seen with him, like with Chris Van Fleet, and
Oh, I saw that one.
yeah, he does not break character at all.
No, I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, he calls him names and everything. I mean, it's just like this guy. I mean, it's actually very refreshing to have that back, because he doesn't break character.
What I like about that Chris Van Fleet one.
Yeah.
Now, maybe Chris was working too. If he is, congratulations. And I think, of course, he's working something.
Yeah.
But it got to be a point where he was always saying in my head, "Hey, MJF, this is enough. Get off my ass a little."
Yeah.
But he stayed on it and kept on going. I mean,
yeah.
I think the kid may be in 5 years the highest paid wrestler by far of all times.
Yeah, he is. If he keeps going the way he is, yes, he's gonna. They don't need to make him a baby face. That would be the worst thing they would do.
I hope not.
No, I hope not either.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
But eventually, the people are going to make him a baby face. They're going to start wearing.
Yeah.
They're going to start wearing scarves and stuff like that. But he's got a strong enough personality to go against it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with. Yeah. I like MJF as well. Yeah, he's something else. He's a refreshing part of wrestling of today, because he doesn't. Yeah, he is. So I wanted to ask you: did you ever work for Vern Gagne?
No, I never did.
Was there a reason? Did you ever get asked? Yeah. You just decided not to, or
there was a reason. The trips in the winter. I didn't like winter, and I didn't want to be,
Okay.
And there's no disrespect, but I mean, I know a lot of guys didn't go to Minneapolis because of that. The trips were so long and so cold, and but it was a great territory.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin, so was the main thing for me until cable came in the mid '80s, but. I just was thinking about that the other day. It's like, I don't remember Kevin ever being in the AWA. Even when it was hot in the early 80s, from about 80 to 84, it was on fire. And I don't remember ever seeing you in there. So I wanted to ask you that. And I mean, that's a good reason. I mean, it is cold up there. I ain't gonna lie to you. And I don't blame you for that. So well, you worked in both the NWA and the WWF. You had a lot more, from what I've seen, success while you were in the NWA, WCW. Did you like working for Vince, I guess, Senior?
Oh, I loved it. I had a great job. I was the first local boy that he ever used pretty good, because I didn't start there. I went away for 5 years. I worked there a couple of Christmases. When I go home, I'd work local shows, that they ran around Boston, and he was nice enough to book me. But my job there was to get the heel ready for Bruno. I was Haystack's partner. I was Andre's partner. I would beat Spirisari on the way out. Different heels on the way out, and then I would do the job for the Hansons and the Brodies. So I had a great job, and after 13 months, he came to me and said, "Listen, Kevin, I usually keep a guy in this position 6 months, been here 13 months. If you like me to send you someplace, or if you want to get booked," he said, "but don't hurry. You got a permanent place here." And he was a great guy, a great guy. I'll tell you how gracious this guy was. I had a death in my family, and I missed Madison Square Garden, Boston Garden, and the Philadelphia Spectrum. And when I came back, I came back on a Friday morning, and I worked at North Attleboro. I lived in Boston, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
North Attleboro was right down the road. And I got there, and Angelo Savoli was the agent. And when I got there, he
Mhm.
said, "Come in the bathroom. I need to talk to you." And I thought, well, he's going to give me a finish that he thinks I'm not going to like or what. He pulled out an envelope and said, "The old man told me to give you this." I said, "What is it?" He said, "The 3 towns you missed."
Wow.
How many promoters did that back then?
Back then, yeah, not very many.
And I'm going to tell you, it was padded too. It wasn't just my usual payoff.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the McMahons, even though I've never worked for them.
Yeah.
I appreciate them coming from his loins,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. I'm glad you said that. That's a great story. I know the McMahons get a lot of heat, but
Yeah.
I know Vince Sr. I'm not knocking the current McMahons. They're great people too. They do a lot of stuff for organizations and stuff. I hear a lot of stories about Vince Sr. and how kind he was and how good he was to the wrestlers. If they missed shows like you just talked about, he'd still pay them.
And I'll tell you what, when I worked the gardens, the old time wrestlers from New York would come there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking almost 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But the old time wrestlers would line up, and they'd be in his, he'd call him into his office. He give him $200. I mean, 50 years ago, $200 meant something.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah, when you could buy a beer in a bar for 5 cents and Texas gas for 17, it meant something.
Yeah, that's. I was doing some research too on you, Kevin, and I was really shocked at you're not in the Hall of Fames that I thought you would be in. Now I just read the other day that you're finally getting the men's wrestling award from the Cauliflower Alley Club this coming fall, but you're not, and I don't understand why, because you brought so much to this business during your time, and you've won numerous titles, tag team titles, singles titles, a recognized name in the business. I'm kind of blown away at why you're not in the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Well, I was asked just recently about the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame by Gerald Briscoe, but I'm in the NWA Hall of Fame. I don't see why I would be in the WWF Hall of Fame, because I didn't work for this current run of ship.
Right.
Back then, I wasn't in a position to draw their money. I could help them, but I wasn't in a position. And the other thing is, no disrespect for anybody, right?
Yeah.
Know thyself.
Yeah.
Is one of my big things.
Yeah.
I often thought that if I didn't go into wrestling, it should have been Williams, Yastrzemski, and Sullivan, the 3 left fielders. I couldn't hit a slider. I didn't actually win those matches. I think there should be a wing for guys that put less talented guys like myself over and sacrificed. And until that happens, I'm content. Would I like to be in it? Sure. Everybody wants recognition.
Yeah.
Everybody wants that paycheck or whatever. But don't you think there should be a wing of guys that should be in that Hall of Fame that put guys over?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't throw 50 touchdown passes. I never hit a ball over Fenway Park wall. So I'm happy.
I don't mean to be like.
No, I understand.
You are very deserving of being in I know you're in the NWA Hall of Fame. I read that, but I mean the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. and I understand the WWE one. I mean, that's more of a brand to me. No
Right,
disrespect to WWE, but that's a brand name Hall of Fame.
right.
I'm talking about the one in Waterloo. You know, the Luthez.
Yeah,
You know,
that would be one I would want to be in.
yeah, and
Because-
you deserve to be in there. To me, I think you
I-
deserve to be in there.
Thank you.
Uh, um, and you know, I was so excited when I saw your name on the men's wrestling award for the Cauliflower
Thank
Alley
you.
Club.
Thank
And
you.
and I told you before we came on, my wife and I are gonna try to get out there. I want to be there for that
Thank you.
and shake your hand and talk to you for a little bit. Because you are a very nice, humble person. You know, you're not the Prince of Darkness outside of the ring.
No,
You know, when we talked a little bit at WrestleCon, you were very forthcoming and very nice, and I really appreciate it. So, one more question, then we'll let you go,
yeah.
Kevin. What are you doing now, sir? What are some things coming up for you that you're working on?
Well, I'm in week after next. I'm in Brooklyn for 3 days on the signing, and then the following weekend I'm in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
I just did Vice had that dark side of the ring. Now they have the territories. I just came back from Tampa, as
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was with Gerald Briscoe, Steve Kern, Bob Roop, and Brian Blair talking about the Florida territory.
Yeah.
Supposedly, I'm supposed to do the one about Polynesian Pro Wrestling. I was
Okay.
their last booker
Oh, okay.
before Rocky came back and took it over. And I'm busy all month of June, and I'm watching the whales going by the house. You know, I live on an island, so it's pretty cool.
That's great. That's wonderful. I want to thank you again for coming on here. I really appreciate it. It's quite an honor and privilege for me to have one of my childhood, I don't want to say hero, but villain, heel that I really couldn't stand, but now I understand everything a lot better on the podcast. So, Kevin, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster, the Prince of Darkness. Thank you again, sir, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. I really enjoyed it.
All right. And folks, if you're watching, thank you. If you're listening, thank you. Please subscribe if you haven't, and we'll talk to you soon.